look for the soft skills in an engineer. I don't always look at the best qualification or the best experience. I always look and try and judge how that person comes across in an interview. If they can't communicate well in an interview, then I know they're not going to make a good communicator once they hit the ground running without support.
Today, I'm going to be chatting with Jeff Williams from LCM Systems. Jeff is the MD of LCM Systems, joining them as Managing Director in 2023. Prior to this, he spent 10 years with FinTech as their engineering manager, leading the development of a range of force sensors and load cells. And prior to this was in a variety of engineering and operational roles with various household names such as Panasonic and Hitachi. Today, we're going to be chatting about his career to date and experiences and lessons learned in a hope that it can help some junior engineers entering the field today. But again, thank you very much for taking the time to do this with me. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I'll get cracking if that's all right then. So first question,
Okay.
What advice would you give your younger self, especially when you're just starting out in engineering?
I guess the advice I would give myself, based on reflecting back over quite a long period of my career, was don't be afraid to step forward and take on more challenging tasks when opportunities present themselves. Quite often you can be a junior guy in a meeting, you've got something to say, and whether you're brave enough to say it or you pick the right moment to say it, because not everyone wants to listen to somebody who they may not see as a senior member. So I always say, if you don't agree with what they're doing or what the direction is, always try and communicate that professionally. You don't have to do it in the meeting. You can always take it to your superior after the meeting, because you'll be surprised. Quite often I will change my mind if I set my direction in a meeting and somebody challenges me in a professional way or comes to talk to me afterwards. There's been quite a few times when I've actually changed my direction.
Okay.
So that would be it, because most people will just sit there and fester on something and then say, I told you so later. And that's the last thing your manager wants to hear, yeah?
Yeah, cool. So speak up, share your ideas.
Definitely. But
Cool.
Obviously, you've got to pick your timing for it. You can't always do it in a fully blown meeting with a lot of senior people around you.
Yeah. Looking back, what skills or knowledge do you wish you had developed earlier in your career?
For me, probably working on my communication.
Okay.
Obviously, when you first start off, you can be quite nervous. You don't know whether you should speak or what you should say. But certainly, I always say, always work on your communications, and always, if you're putting an idea forward, always consider the risks as well as the rewards, and also look at the impact of if anything went wrong as well, and try and communicate both sides of that.
Okay. Do you think the soft skills are an aspect that aren't, or there's no kind of, especially with university courses, there's no kind of training or development within the soft skills alongside obviously the technical skills? And is that something you think younger engineers should be learning before they're going into the workplace?
Definitely. For me, I'm constantly recruiting engineers, both junior graduates, senior people and managers. I always look for the soft skills in an engineer. I don't always look at the best qualification or the best experience. I always look and try and judge how that person comes across in an interview. If they can't communicate well in an interview, then I know they're not going to make a good communicator once they hit the ground running without support. And soft skills, and unfortunately, is sadly lacking with young engineers. Everyone just works on their technical ability and qualifications.
Yeah, there's no emphasis in any university courses on any of the soft kind of skills or aspect. And reflecting on your career, what's one mistake that ended up being a major learning experience for you?
Oh, I've made lots of mistakes in my career. I always try and learn from them, and also try and educate others not to make the same mistakes. But I guess whether it's a strength or a weakness, I've always been an optimistic engineer. You know, I'm not afraid to go for the best case scenario. And again, it comes back to what I said earlier, always trying to consider the pitfalls or risks from ideas or that you've made. And in the past, maybe I haven't considered the risks and I've just aimed for the stars. And if it hasn't gone quite right, then I've regretted that later.
Okay. I did have a follow-up question to that as well, which was how did your experience shape your approach to your work today? But I'm assuming that's kind of answered that already.
Yeah, I always look at the pros and cons of anything, especially change. Change is the biggest uncertainty. Nobody likes change, and that's normally something that you need to do sometimes when you've got new ideas. So just list the pros and cons, and if the pros stack up, then at least you can consider the fallback plans of anything that may go wrong, especially during an investment phase or a change in process.
Yeah. Sorry, engineering fields can be tough. what was the most challenging points in your career and how did you overcome it?
Oh, now that is a tough one for me. There were two things that happened to me in my career roughly at the same time.
Okay.
And they certainly stand up well above everything else that's happened to me. I was a member. I was a manager in a large organization, and I had a senior member that I inherited when I took over a couple of other departments. And for many years, he'd been suffering from mental health, and that person had been taking a lot of time off. And we were always giving him support to come back to work. And then towards the end, when the problem occurred, he went off for some period of time. So we involved occupational health to help him come back as a return to work. So we offered him a return to work in a staggered progress. We also had our company assessed, his workload assessed. We also agreed to reduce his responsibilities because he was obviously struggling with the workloads. So we put that plan in place. And unfortunately, the employee decided after quite a long absence to put his notice in and leave and take another job. So that seemed to, go part of course. So we moved on. Unfortunately, a week later, after that decision had been made, the global company I worked for announced they were closing the UK operation and they were making 150 engineers redundant. And we had a 3-month cooling off period. So that was really tough for me because I had quite a new team. I'd employed probably 20 people in roles in the last few years, building a team up and then having to tell everybody they were being made redundant. So that was the thing that was the first thing that went wrong. Unfortunately, a week later, when everyone was preparing for redundancy, we got a letter off a solicitor from the former employee who'd already left the business, seeking unfair dismissal and claiming constructive dismissal, and named me and the company, which was a complete shock to everybody. So obviously I was under a lot of pressure anyway with dealing with myself, my own situation, plus all my teams. So I was asked then by the company to challenge the claim because they could see the evidence. They didn't believe it was true, neither did myself. So I had to then prepare for a lawsuit in a small claims court with support of the company and the lawyers, and prepare my case for the small claims court. Which probably took about a month to do. As part of my redundancy, I was having to work on this plus other things.
Oh.
Fortunately, a day before the lawsuit, when everything was prepared, the lawsuit was dropped. The employee decided they weren't going to win the case based on what evidence we put together and what they knew was the truth, and the case was dropped. So that was quite a relief to me because obviously my name was and my reputation was on the line. Unfortunately, a couple of weeks later, the employee decided to commit suicide. So that was really tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, yeah,
So I had two things happen in that case, and it took me a while to get over it. And I still reflect on that looking back. So I always make sure I do the very best when I manage people moving forward. Yeah. You can never change the outcome, but you can try and do your best. And I look back, I thought I did my best, but obviously it wasn't enough. So I did feel, even though I don't think I was responsible, I did feel responsible for the outcome of that.
Yeah. No, I can imagine that would be absolutely horrible to have to deal with and go through. But thank you very much for sharing that. Appreciate it.